The autumn wind carried a chill that cut through Olivia Miller's wool shawl as she stood on the weathered porch of what had once been the town's most prosperous general store. Independence, California, 1875, once a bustling mining settlement full of promise and opportunity, now resembled nothing more than a ghost of its former self. The gold had dried up months ago, and with it, the town's lifeblood. Olivia's fingers trembled as she turned the key in the lock one final time. The shelves inside stood nearly empty, what little remained hardly worth packing. 3 years she had poured into this place after inheriting it from her father. 3 years of struggle and determination, all for nothing. She hadn't heard the approach of hoofbeats until the horse whinnied softly behind her. Turning, Olivia found herself looking up at a tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. The stranger dismounted with practiced ease, his spurs jingling against the dirt as his boots hit the ground. His face came into view as he stepped forward, weather-beaten but handsome, with eyes the color of a summer storm. "Store's closed," she said, her voice flat with exhaustion and defeat. "For good." The stranger removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "I'm not looking to buy, madam. Just passing through and thought I might find a place to rest for the night." Olivia laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "You picked the wrong town for that. There's nothing left here. Everyone's gone." The man's eyes swept over the empty street, taking in the abandoned buildings and the eerie quiet that had replaced the once lively town. His gaze returned to her face, studying her with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable but somehow didn't. "Then let me be the one fool who stays," he said softly, extending his hand. "Ethan Hayes, pleasure to make your acquaintance, Miss Miller, Olivia Miller." She hesitated before taking his hand, surprised by the gentleness of his grip. "And I'm afraid you'd be wasting your time, Mr. Hayes. There's nothing left in Independence worth staying for." Ethan Hayes offered a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I'll be the judge of that, Miss Miller. Sometimes the things most worth finding aren't what you expected." Little did Olivia know how prophetic those words would prove to be. The abandoned boarding house still had a few usable rooms, and Olivia found herself leading the mysterious Cowboy down the dusty hallway. Mrs. Caldwell had left 2 months ago, along with the last remaining families who'd held out hope for a miracle that never came. "It's not much," she said, pushing open a door to reveal a small room with a narrow bed and a wash basin. "But it's clean enough. No one's been here since the Caldwells departed." Ethan nodded his thanks, dropping his saddlebags onto the floor. "It'll do just fine. Been sleeping under the stars for so long, a roof will feel like luxury." Curiosity got the better of her. "Where are you headed, Mr. Hayes?" "Nowhere in particular." He shrugged, unbuckling his gun belt and hanging it over the bedpost. "Been doing odd jobs across California. Heard there might be work at the new silver mine opening near Carson City." "That's nearly 100 miles northeast," Olivia said. "You're off course." A faint smile played at his lips. "Sometimes the wrong turn leads you exactly where you need to be." Something about his cryptic answer made Olivia's heart beat a little faster, but she pushed the feeling aside. "Well, there's a pump out back if you need water. I suppose I could rustle up some dinner if you haven't eaten." "I'd be much obliged, Miss Miller, but only if you'll allow me to repay the kindness somehow." Olivia hesitated. She had planned to spend her last night in Independence alone, packing what little she could take with her on tomorrow's stage. But the thought of sharing a meal with another person, of not being alone with her thoughts for a few hours, was unexpectedly appealing. "Very well, Mr. Hayes. Dinner in an hour." As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Miss Miller, thank you for not turning away a stranger." She looked back at him, this man who had appeared out of nowhere on the day everyone else had gone. In a ghost town, Mr. Hayes, even ghosts are welcome company. Olivia's small house behind the general store was modest but comfortable. She had taken pains to make it a home, with colorful curtains at the windows and a braided rug before the hearth. Now, most of her possessions were packed in trunks, ready for the morning stage to San Francisco, where her aunt had offered her a place to stay until she found her footing. As she prepared a simple meal of beans, bacon, and cornbread, Olivia found herself wondering about Ethan Hayes. He didn't have the look of a drifter, despite his travel-worn clothes. There was something in his bearing and the way he spoke that suggested education and breeding. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Ethan stood there, hat in hand, his hair still damp from washing. He'd shaved, she noticed, and changed his shirt. "Something smells mighty fine," he said, stepping inside when she gestured him in. "Just beans and bacon, nothing special." "After weeks of my own cooking, Miss Miller, trust me when I say it'll be special." They ate at her small kitchen table, the lamplight casting a warm glow over them. Ethan ate with appreciation but not desperation, further confirming Olivia's suspicion that he wasn't some down-on-his-luck drifter. "So," he said after a while, "you mentioned everyone's gone. Mind if I ask what happened to Independence?" Olivia set down her fork. "Same thing that happens to most mining towns. The gold ran out. The Eastern Slope mine was the lifeblood of this place. When they struck the final vein last winter and found nothing but rock, people started leaving. First the miners, then the businesses that depended on them. And you stayed until the end." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "This store was my father's legacy. He died 3 years ago, just as the town was beginning to struggle. I promised him I'd keep it going." Ethan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Sometimes promises are all we have left, and sometimes even those aren't enough." Olivia sighed. "I'm leaving tomorrow. Stage comes through at noon. There's nothing keeping me here anymore." A comfortable silence fell between them. Ethan seemed content to simply be present, not pushing for more conversation. It was strangely comforting. "What about you, Mr. Hayes?" Olivia finally asked. "You mentioned odd jobs, but you don't strike me as a drifter." A shadow passed over his face. "I was a rancher once, had a spread near Sacramento, lost it 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," she said, meaning it. He shrugged, but she could see the pain behind the casual gesture. "Life has a way of taking unexpected turns. My brother and I ran the place together after our parents passed. He got himself into gambling debts. By the time I found out, it was too late. The ranch was mortgaged to the hilt. Your brother headed east, Chicago last I heard. Couldn't face what had happened." Ethan's expression hardened briefly before softening again. "So I've been working where I can, saving what I might. One day I'll have another ranch, smaller perhaps, but my own." Olivia recognized the determination in his voice. It was the same determination that had kept her in Independence long after it made sense to stay. "A dream worth having," she said softly. "Most are." Ethan's eyes met hers across the table. "What's yours, Miss Miller?" After San Francisco, the question caught her off guard. She had been so focused on survival, on keeping her father's store running, that she hadn't allowed herself the luxury of dreaming. I'm not sure anymore. I suppose I'll find work as a shopkeeper or a clerk somewhere. But if you could choose anything." Olivia felt a long, buried wish stir within her. "I always wanted to open a bookshop. My mother loved books, taught me to read before I even started school. In a mining town, there wasn't much call for novels and poetry, but in a city, a bookshop sounds like just the place for new beginnings," Ethan said, his smile warming her more than the coffee she sipped. After dinner, Ethan insisted on washing the dishes, his capable hands making quick work of the task while Olivia dried. The simple domesticity of the moment struck her as oddly poignant. This might be the last meal she ever prepared in this house, the last time these plates would be used here. "I should let you get some rest," Ethan said, hanging the dish towel to dry. "You have a long journey tomorrow." "Yes," Olivia agreed, though suddenly the thought of him leaving brought an unexpected pang of regret. "Thank you for the company, Mr. Hayes. Ethan, please. Ethan." His name felt right on her lips. "And I'm Olivia," he nodded, reaching for his hat. "Good night, Olivia. And thank you again for your hospitality." As he stepped out into the night, Olivia found herself wondering if their paths might cross again someday. It seemed unlikely. California was vast, and they were both headed in different directions. But for the first time since the town began emptying, she felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. Morning brought a clear sky and a brisk wind from the mountains. Olivia woke early, her mind already racing with all that needed to be done before the stage arrived. She had one trunk and 2 carpet bags packed, containing all of her worldly possessions that would fit. The furniture would stay, along with the heavier kitchen items and her father's desk. Perhaps someday another hopeful soul would find use for them. She was sweeping the porch of the general store one last time when Ethan approached, leading his horse by the reins. "Morning," he called, tipping his hat. "Thought I might lend a hand before you go." Olivia leaned her broom against the wall. "That's kind of you, but there's not much left to do, just waiting for the stage now." Ethan glanced up at the sun's position. "Should be a few hours yet. I noticed your sign was hanging crooked. Thought I might fix it for you." She followed his gaze to the wooden sign that read Miller's General Store in faded paint. It had been hanging askew for months, one of the chains having rusted through. "It doesn't much matter now." "Maybe not," he agreed, "but a man likes to feel useful." Without waiting for her response, he tied his horse to the hitching post and strode to the side of the building where a ladder was propped. Olivia watched as he climbed up and secured the sign properly, his movements efficient and practiced. When he descended, she offered him water from the pump. "Seems a shame," he said after drinking deeply, "letting a good building go to waste." "The whole town's going to waste," Olivia replied, gesturing at the empty street. "Gold made independence and the lack of it unmade it." Ethan set the cup down, his expression thoughtful. "Towns die and are reborn all the time. All it takes is a reason for people to come." "And what reason would that be?" "The mine's dry. The railroad bypassed us by 20 miles and the soil's too poor for good farming." "There's always ranching," Ethan said, surveying the rolling hills that surrounded the town. "Good grazing land from the look of it." Olivia hadn't considered that. The town had been so focused on mining that other possibilities had been overlooked. "Perhaps," she conceded, "but it would take someone with knowledge and capital to make a go of it." Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "Mind if I look around a bit? I've got some time to kill before I head out." "Help yourself," Olivia said, turning back to her sweeping. "Not much to see anymore, though." As Ethan walked away, leading his horse down the deserted main street, Olivia couldn't help but watch him go. There was something compelling about the cowboy, something that made her wish their meeting had occurred in different circumstances, at a different time. By mid-morning, Olivia had finished her tasks and sat on her trunk in front of the general store, waiting for the stagecoach that would carry her away from Independence. Ethan had returned from his explorations, and now stood nearby, his horse saddled and ready for his own departure. "Which way are you headed?" she asked, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "Thought I might ride along to the next town, see what opportunities present themselves." Before Olivia could respond, the distant sound of hoofbeats caught their attention. But instead of the stagecoach, a single rider appeared, pushing his horse hard up the main street. The man reined in sharply before them, his mount lathered with sweat. "You folks waiting for the noon stage?" he asked, his voice tight with urgency. "Yes," Olivia confirmed, rising to her feet. "Is there a problem?" "Stage ain't coming. Bridge washed out 10 miles south during last night's storm. Driver sent me ahead to let folks know. Won't be fixed for at least 3 days, maybe more." Olivia felt her heart sink. 3 more days in this empty town, alone with her thoughts and regrets. "Thank you for letting me know," she managed, her voice steady despite her disappointment. The rider tipped his hat and was gone as quickly as he'd appeared, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. "Well," Olivia said, trying to mask her dismay, "it seems my departure is delayed." Ethan studied her face for a moment. "Would you permit me to stay as well? I could help secure things for your absence, maybe make some repairs around the place." The offer surprised her. "That's generous, Mr. Hayes, Ethan, but I couldn't impose. No imposition. Truth be told, I've been riding hard for weeks. A few days' rest in one place would be welcome." He offered a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Besides, it seems wrong to leave a lady alone in a ghost town." Olivia should have bristled at the suggestion that she needed protection, but there was something comforting about the thought of not spending her final days in independence in complete solitude. "Very well," she agreed, "but I insist on compensating you for any work you do." Ethan's smile widened, genuine this time. "We'll see about that." The next 3 days passed in a rhythm that felt both strange and somehow familiar. Ethan proved himself handy with tools, fixing loose boards on the store's porch, repairing a leaky roof on the small stable behind Olivia's house, and tending to a dozen other small tasks that she had long neglected. For her part, Olivia found herself cooking meals for 2 again, something she hadn't done since her father's passing. There was comfort in the routine, in having someone to share the quiet evening hours with as they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. They talked, 2 long conversations that ranged from childhood memories to hopes for the future. Ethan spoke of his dream to build a new ranch, one that combined cattle raising with horse breeding. Olivia shared stories of her father and their life before independence began to fail, and her nascent plans for a bookshop in San Francisco. On the morning of the 3rd day, Ethan surprised her by asking to see the inside of the general store. "It's mostly empty," she warned as she unlocked the front door. "I sold what I could and gave away most of the rest." The large room was indeed bare compared to its former state. A few shelves still held canned goods and tools that hadn't been worth the trouble of packing, or that Olivia had kept for her own use during her final weeks in town. Ethan walked the perimeter, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. He examined the countertop, ran his hand along the shelving, and peered into the storeroom at the back. "Solid building," he commented. "Your father built it well." "He did," Olivia agreed, a touch of pride in her voice. "Said if you're going to do something, do it right the first time." "Smart man." Ethan turned to face her, something unreadable in his expression. "Olivia, I've been thinking about what you said regarding independence, about there being nothing left here worth staying for." She tensed slightly, unsure where this conversation was heading. "Yes, I disagree." His voice was calm but firm. "There's land here, good land for the right purpose. The buildings are sound, the water's clean, and it's situated perfectly between the mountains and the valley. But without the mine, not every town needs a mine," Ethan interrupted gently. "Some thrive on other enterprises." Olivia shook her head, confusion mingling with a strange flutter of anticipation. "What are you saying, Ethan?" He took a step closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of green in his gray eyes. "I'm saying that I see potential here. And I'm wondering if you might consider staying." The words hung between them, charged with meaning. "Staying, but there's nothing for me here anymore." "There could be," Ethan said softly. "I've been riding for 2 years, looking for the right place to start over. When I crested that hill and saw Independence nestled in this valley, something felt right. And then I met you, standing on that porch, defiant even in defeat." Olivia felt her cheeks warm at his words. "You can't possibly know me well enough to, I know enough," he insisted. "I know you're intelligent and resourceful. I know you love books and have a head for business. I know you kept this store running long after others would have given up." "And failed," she reminded him. "The store failed because the town failed," Ethan corrected. "But towns can be reborn." Olivia studied his face, looking for signs of deception or madness, but finding only earnest determination. "What exactly are you proposing, Ethan?" He drew a deep breath. "I have savings not enough for the ranch of my dreams, but enough to buy some cattle and horses, to start small and grow. This valley has good grazing land. The abandoned buildings could house workers, maybe attract other businesses." "And the store?" she asked, her heart beating faster despite her attempt to remain practical. "Every ranch needs supplies. Every growing town needs a general store." Ethan's eyes held hers. "And every store needs a proprietor who knows the business." The implication was clear, and yet Olivia found herself needing to hear it stated plainly. "Are you asking me to be your business partner?" A smile quirked the corner of his mouth. "For starters. But I hope in time we might consider a more permanent arrangement." Olivia inhaled sharply. "Mr. Hayes, we've known each other for 4 days. And in those 4 days I've come to respect and admire you more than most people I've known for years." His expression grew serious. "I'm not proposing marriage, not yet. I'm proposing a chance for both of us to build something lasting." Olivia turned away, needing space to think. The idea was preposterous, reckless, and yet, hadn't she been yearning for something more than mere survival? For a purpose beyond keeping her father's store alive. "The stage will be here tomorrow," she said quietly. "I have an aunt expecting me." "Write to her," Ethan suggested. "Tell her you've found an opportunity worth exploring. If it doesn't work out, San Francisco will still be there." Olivia moved to the window, looking out at the empty street that had once bustled with miners and merchants, families and dreamers. Could it truly live again? And more importantly, could she find the courage to stake her future on this man and his vision? "You're asking me to take an enormous risk," she said, turning back to face him. Ethan nodded, unashamed. "I am, but I believe it could be worth it for both of us." The stagecoach arrived the next day, right on schedule. Olivia stood on the porch of Miller's General Store, watching as it rolled to a stop before her. The driver looked surprised to see anyone waiting. "Miss Miller," he greeted, tipping his hat. "Didn't expect to find you still here. Thought for sure you'd have taken yesterday's stage from Pine Creek." "Change of plans, Mr. Dawson," she replied, approaching the coach with an envelope in hand. "I won't be traveling to San Francisco today, but I would appreciate if you could deliver this letter to the post office in Sacramento." The driver looked confused but took the envelope. "As you wish, madam, but are you sure about staying? Independence is pretty much a ghost town now." Olivia glanced back at Ethan, who stood a respectful distance away, watching the exchange. "Not for long, Mr. Dawson. I have it on good authority that Independence is about to experience a revival." The driver followed her gaze to Ethan, understanding dawning in his weathered face. "Well, I'll be. Always said this valley was too pretty to abandon." He pocketed the letter and tipped his hat again. "Best of luck to you, Miss Miller." Shall I spread the word that Independence might be open for business again soon? Please do, Olivia said, feeling a surge of excitement at speaking the words aloud. Tell them Independence isn't done yet. As the stagecoach pulled away in a cloud of dust, Ethan walked to Olivia's side. No regrets, he asked quietly. She turned to him, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Ask me in a year, but for now, no regrets. Ethan smiled, offering his arm. Then let's get to work, Miss Miller. We have a town to resurrect and a future to build. Olivia took his arm, feeling as though she were stepping into an entirely new life, one filled with uncertainty, yes, but also with possibility. Lead the way, Mr. Hayes. The weeks that followed were filled with more hard work than Olivia had ever known, but also with a sense of purpose that had been missing for too long. Ethan purchased land outside of town, 300 acres of rolling hills that would serve as the foundation for Hayes Ranch. With the help of 2 experienced cowhands he hired from a neighboring county, he brought in a small herd of cattle and a half-dozen quality horses to start his breeding program. Olivia, meanwhile, reopened Miller's General Store, albeit with a limited inventory. She wrote to suppliers in Sacramento and San Francisco, negotiating favorable terms based on the promise of a growing community. To her surprise, many remembered her father and were willing to extend credit to his daughter. Word began to spread that Independence was making a comeback. A blacksmith who had left for Nevada returned, bringing his family and reopening his forge. An elderly couple who had run the town's small restaurant decided that retirement didn't suit them and came back to serve meals to the growing population of ranch hands and travelers. Through it all, Ethan and Olivia worked side by side, their partnership strengthening with each challenge overcome. He often came to the store in the evenings, helping her take inventory or unload deliveries. She, in turn, kept the books for his fledgling ranch and helped negotiate deals for additional livestock. They dined together most evenings, sometimes joined by others, but often just the 2 of them. In those quiet moments, sharing meals and conversation, Olivia found herself falling for the determined cowboy who had refused to let her give up on Independence or herself. 4 months after the day Ethan had ridden into town, Olivia stood on the porch of the general store, watching as workers raised the frame for a new building across the street. Ethan had commissioned a proper office for his ranching operation, a sign that Hayes Ranch was prospering. Quite a change from when I arrived, he said, coming to stand beside her. His presence was familiar now, comforting in a way she had never expected. Indeed, she agreed. Though I'm still not convinced you aren't the biggest fool in California for staying in a ghost town. Ethan chuckled. Not a ghost town anymore, and as for being a fool. He turned to face her, his expression growing serious. The only foolish thing would have been riding away from the most remarkable woman I've ever met. Olivia's cheeks warmed at his words. Over the months, their relationship had deepened beyond business partners, but neither had spoken openly of their feelings. Until now. Ethan, she began, unsure how to respond. Olivia, he interrupted gently, taking her hands in his. I told you once that I wasn't proposing marriage, not yet. I believed we needed time to know each other to be sure of what we wanted. Her heart began to race. And now I'm sure. His eyes held hers, sincere and unwavering. I love you, Olivia Miller. I love your determination, your intelligence, your kindness. I love the way you refuse to give up, even when everything seems hopeless. I love the future we've started building together. Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes, but they were tears of joy. I love you too, she whispered. I think I began falling for you the moment you said you'd be the one fool who stays. Ethan's smile was radiant as he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "Then would you do me the honor of continuing to build that future as my wife? Of turning Hayes Ranch into a true family enterprise?" Olivia didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, her voice steady and sure. "Yes, I will marry you, Ethan Hayes." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant gold ring set with a small diamond. "It's not fancy," he apologized as he slipped it onto her finger, "but like independence, it has potential to grow into something more." "It's perfect," Olivia assured him, admiring how the gem caught the afternoon light. "Just like your timing." Ethan raised an eyebrow in question. "I received a letter this morning," she explained. "The Sacramento Gazette is planning a feature on California's Phoenix town, their words for independence's revival. They're sending a reporter next week." Ethan laughed, drawing her into an embrace. "Perfect timing indeed. A town reborn, and a marriage beginning, both proof that giving up is never the only option." As his lips met hers in a tender kiss, Olivia reflected on how drastically her life had changed in just a few months. From the brink of abandoning her home to planning a wedding and a future in the very town she'd been prepared to leave behind. All because one stubborn cowboy had refused to accept defeat for the town, for himself, or for her. News of their engagement spread quickly through Independence, bringing congratulations and well wishes from the growing population. The town that had been on the verge of becoming a footnote in California's history was now a community again, with the promise of a bright future ahead. The wedding took place in the early spring of 1876, as wildflowers carpeted the hills around Independence. The small church, which had been shuttered just months earlier, was filled to capacity with townspeople, neighboring ranchers, and even a few curious visitors who had heard tales of the town's remarkable recovery. Olivia wore a gown of ivory satin ordered specially from San Francisco. As she walked down the aisle toward Ethan, who stood tall and proud in a new black suit, she marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. From strangers meeting on the porch of an abandoned store to partners in both business and life. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises to support and cherish one another through whatever challenges lay ahead. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up from the congregation seemed to celebrate not just their union, but the rebirth of independence itself. The reception was held on the grounds of Hayes Ranch, which had grown considerably in the months since its founding. A large barn had been constructed, serving as both a functional building for the ranch and a gathering place for the community. Tables laden with food and drink stretched the length of the structure, while a small band played lively tunes for dancing. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the valley, Ethan led Olivia away from the celebration to a small rise overlooking both the ranch and the town in the distance. "Happy, Mrs. Hayes?" he asked, his arm around her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Though I must admit, when you rode into town that day, I never imagined this would be the outcome." Ethan chuckled. "Life has a way of surprising us. When I lost the ranch in Sacramento, I thought my dreams had ended. Now I realize they were just beginning." Olivia turned in his arms to face him. "Do you ever regret it? Staying in a dying town with a woman you barely knew?" "Not for a single moment," he answered without hesitation, brushing a tendril of hair from her face. "Best decision I ever made." As they sealed this declaration with a kiss, Olivia silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought Ethan Hayes to Independence on that autumn day, when she had been ready to give up on everything. His faith in the town, in her, in their shared future had changed not just her life, but the lives of everyone who now called Independence home. The years that followed brought both challenges and triumphs to the newlyweds. Hayes Ranch prospered, expanding its operation to include not only cattle but a successful horse breeding program that soon became known throughout California for producing exceptional stock. Ethan's knowledge of horseflesh and his fair business practices earned him a reputation that drew buyers from as far away as Oregon and Nevada. Miller's General Store, still bearing Olivia's family name though she now signed the ledgers as Olivia Hayes, grew along with the town. What had once been a simple trading post became a thriving establishment offering everything from basic necessities to luxury goods ordered from San Francisco and beyond. Olivia even managed to fulfill her dream of selling books, dedicating a corner of the store to a carefully curated selection of novels, poetry, and educational texts. Independence itself underwent a transformation that few would have thought possible. The population, which had dwindled to nearly nothing in the autumn of 1875, swelled to over 300 souls by 1880. New businesses opened a proper hotel, a schoolhouse, a doctor's office, and old buildings found new purposes. The abandoned mine even found new life, not as a source of gold but as a supplier of building stone for the expanding town. In the spring of 1877, Ethan and Olivia welcomed their first child, a son they named William after Olivia's father. The boy inherited his father's sturdy build and his mother's keen intelligence, quickly becoming the pride of independence. 2 years later, a daughter joined the family, Elizabeth, with her father's gray eyes and a spirit as independent as the town for which she was named. Life wasn't without its hardships. A drought in 1879 threatened the ranch's survival, forcing Ethan to drive his cattle farther afield in search of grazing land. A fire in 1881 damaged several buildings in town, including part of the general store. But each time adversity struck, the community rallied, demonstrating the resilience that had become Independence's hallmark. Through it all, Ethan and Olivia's partnership remained strong, their love deepening with each passing year. They worked together, planned together, faced challenges together, a unified force that inspired those around them. By 1885, Hayes Ranch had become one of the most respected cattle operations in Eastern California. The main house, once a simple 2-room cabin, had expanded into a comfortable family home with wide porches and large windows that captured views of the surrounding landscape. A bunkhouse housed the dozen ranch hands who kept the operation running, while various outbuildings served specific functions for the thriving business. Miller's General Store had undergone its own expansion, with Olivia hiring 2 clerks to help manage the increased trade. The book section had grown into a proper bookshop within the store, becoming a gathering place for the intellectually minded residents of Independence and surrounding communities. On the 10th anniversary of their wedding, Ethan surprised Olivia with a weekend trip to San Francisco, a rare opportunity for the busy couple to spend time alone together. As they strolled along the bustling waterfront, Olivia couldn't help but reflect on how different her life might have been had she boarded that stagecoach a decade earlier. "Any regrets?" Ethan asked, seeming to read her thoughts as he often did after so many years together. "Not one," she assured him, squeezing his hand. "Though I do wonder sometimes about that bookshop I thought I wanted." Ethan smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling in the way she had always found endearing. "You have your bookshop and so much more." "Indeed I do." Olivia leaned into his embrace as they watched the ships in the harbor. "A husband I adore, children who make me proud every day, and a town that refused to die thanks to one stubborn cowboy." "And one equally stubborn shopkeeper," Ethan reminded her. We built Independence's second chance together, Olivia, just as we've built our life together. Back in Independence, their children were being cared for by Olivia's aunt, who had moved to the town 5 years earlier after being widowed. The elderly woman had found a new purpose helping with the children and assisting at the store, proving that new beginnings were possible at any age. The town continued to grow, with new families arriving regularly, drawn by stories of opportunity and community. Hayes Ranch expanded its operations, providing employment for many. The general store thrived, serving as both a commercial hub and a gathering place where news was shared and friendships formed. In 1890, 15 years after Ethan had ridden into what was then a ghost town, Independence celebrated its official recognition as an incorporated town within California. The celebration included a parade down the main street, a community feast on the grounds of Hayes Ranch, and the dedication of a new town hall named for William Miller, Olivia's father, whose store had been one of the anchors that kept the town from disappearing completely. During the ceremony, the mayor, a former blacksmith who had returned in those early days of revival, called Ethan and Olivia to the podium. Independence wouldn't be here today if not for the vision and determination of these two individuals, he announced to the assembled crowd. When others saw a dying town, they saw possibility. When others left, they stayed, and in staying, they created something extraordinary. As applause erupted around them, Ethan took Olivia's hand, his expression one of quiet pride. "Not bad for the one fool who stayed," he whispered. Olivia's eyes shimmered with tears of joy as she squeezed his hand in return. And the woman who was wise enough to stay with him. Their children, now 13 and 11, watched from the front row, their faces shining with pride for their parents' role in the town's history. Young William already showed signs of following in his father's footsteps, displaying a natural affinity for ranching and a head for business. Elizabeth, meanwhile, had inherited her mother's love of books and was already helping in the store's literary section after school. That evening, as the celebration continued around them, Ethan and Olivia slipped away for a quiet moment together on the porch of their home. The sounds of music and laughter drifted up from the town, a testament to the vibrant community they had helped build. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Olivia asked, leaning against the porch railing beside her husband. "When I told you everyone was gone," Ethan nodded, his arm slipping around her waist in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over their years together. "I said I'd be the one fool who stays." "The best kind of fool," Olivia said softly, turning to face him. "The kind who sees possibility where others see only endings. The kind who takes chances on abandoned towns and desperate shopkeepers. The kind who falls in love at first sight." Ethan suggested, his expression tender in the fading light. "Was it really first sight?" "The moment I saw you standing on that porch, defiant even in defeat," Ethan confirmed. "Something told me you were worth staying for, worth fighting for." Olivia raised a hand to his cheek, still handsome despite the lines that years of sun and wind had etched there. "I'm glad you listened to that something." As twilight settled over Independence, Ethan drew his wife closer. "To think all this began because a bridge washed out and delayed your departure. I think it began the moment you decided to be that one fool who stays," Olivia corrected gently. "Everything else, the bridge, the ranch, the town's revival, those were just the details of a story that started with your choice." Ethan's kiss was as tender as it was familiar, a reaffirmation of the love that had sustained them through 15 years of building a life together. When they finally parted, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, countless pinpoints of light that seemed to mirror the scattered lamps of the town below. "We should rejoin the celebration," Olivia said reluctantly. "They'll be wondering where the guests of honor have gone." "Let them wonder for a few minutes more," Ethan replied, keeping her close. "Some moments deserve to be savored." As they stood together in comfortable silence, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From a chance meeting in a dying town to becoming the founders of a thriving community. From strangers to partners to husband and wife. From despair to hope to fulfillment. All because when she had said, "Everyone's gone," Ethan Hayes had answered, "Then let me be the one fool who stays." And in staying, he had given her and independence a second chance at life. A chance they had seized with both hands, transforming loss into legacy, abandonment into abundance, endings into beginnings. 25 years after Ethan rode into independence, the town celebrated its silver anniversary as an incorporated municipality. The once dying mining settlement had transformed into a prosperous ranching community of nearly 800 souls, with Hayes Ranch as its economic centerpiece and Miller's General Store now expanded into a department store with the bookshop occupying its own adjacent building as its social heart. Ethan and Olivia, now in their 50s but still vibrant and active in the community, stood on the steps of the town hall as honored guests for the celebration. Their son William, 33 and recently married, had taken over much of the day-to-day operation of Hayes Ranch, implementing modern techniques while maintaining the principles of quality and integrity his father had established. Their daughter Elizabeth, 31, managed the bookshop with the same passion for literature that had inspired her mother's original dream. "If someone had told me 50 years ago that a failed mining town would become all this," remarked an elderly visitor who had been one of Independence's original settlers, "I'd have called them crazy." Ethan smiled, his arm comfortably around Olivia's shoulders. "Sometimes the craziest ideas are the ones most worth pursuing." "Like staying in a ghost town," Olivia teased, the familiar banter as comfortable as a well-worn saddle. "Like believing that one person can make a difference," Ethan corrected gently. "Like trusting that something abandoned can find new purpose." As they mingled with the townsfolk, many of whom had their own stories of finding new beginnings in independence, Ethan and Olivia were continually reminded of the legacy they had helped create. Children who had grown up in the town now had children of their own. Businesses that had started in those early days of revival had passed to the next generation. The community had developed its own traditions, its own character, its own identity beyond its mining origins. That evening, a grand dinner was held in the town square, with tables arranged under strings of lanterns that cast a warm glow over the gathering. As the honorary first citizens of the reborn Independence, Ethan and Olivia were seated at the head table, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and the town officials. The mayor, a woman who had come to Independence as a young bride 20 years earlier, rose to offer a toast. To Ethan and Olivia Hayes, whose vision and perseverance created not just a ranch or a store, but a community where dreams can take root and grow. Independence owes its second life to your refusal to give up when everyone else had gone. Glasses were raised across the square, the gathered townspeople adding their voices to the chorus of appreciation. To the Hayes family, afterward, as music played and couples took to the improvised dance floor in the center of the square, Ethan led Olivia away from the table. Despite the gray in his hair and the slight stiffness in his movements after decades of physical work, he moved with the same natural grace that had caught her eye all those years ago. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Hayes?" he asked with a formal bow that made her laugh. "You may indeed, Mr. Hayes," she replied, stepping into his arms with the ease of long practice. As they swayed to the music under the stars, surrounded by the town they had helped rebuild, Olivia rested her head against Ethan's shoulder. 25 years, she murmured. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that you rode into town. Other times it feels like we've always been here, always been together. In all the ways that matter we have, Ethan replied, his voice low and intimate despite the celebration around them. Some things are just meant to be, Olivia. You, me. This town, it all fit together like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. A puzzle with a beautiful picture, Olivia agreed, looking around at the thriving community, at their son who now stood talking with ranch hands, at their daughter who was organizing games for the children, at the faces of friends and neighbors who had become an extended family over the decades. Later, as the celebration wound down and the older generation began to drift homeward, Ethan and Olivia walked hand in hand toward their house on the edge of town, a comfortable home that had grown over the years to accommodate family gatherings and visiting friends. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd gotten on that stage? Ethan asked as they passed the general store, its windows dark now but still bearing the Miller's sign that Olivia had insisted on keeping as a tribute to her father. Occasionally, she admitted. But then I think of all we would have missed: the ranch, the children, this town, these people. And I'm grateful all over again for that washed-out bridge and the stubborn cowboy who wouldn't let me give up. Ethan stopped walking, turning to face her under the soft glow of a street lamp. Despite the passage of years, his eyes still held the same intensity when they looked at her, the same unwavering devotion. I've never regretted a single day of our life together, he said softly. Not even the hard ones. Nor have I, Olivia assured him, reaching up to trace the familiar contours of his face. We built something remarkable here, Ethan, something that will outlast us both. The best kind of legacy, he agreed, bending to brush his lips against hers in a kiss that carried echoes of their first embrace and the promise of many more to come. As they continued their walk home, Olivia found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment, a journey that began with desolation and despair, but had transformed into a life richer and more fulfilling than anything she could have imagined. All because when everyone else had gone, one man had chosen to stay, and in staying had changed everything.